Ambassador Zethkar of the Hegemony Council stood rigid as the human delegation entered the crystalline chamber. The towering Altarian's forearms crossed in the traditional gesture of dismissal, while his compound eyes tracked the peculiar bipedal creatures with barely concealed disdain. "So," Zethkar's voice resonated through the translator matrix, "these are the humans." The word dripped with contempt. "The species that dares to petition for membership in our ancient alliance." Captain Sarah Chen, leading the human delegation, maintained her composure despite the obvious hostility. Behind her, the other representatives from Earth's United Colonial Administration remained silent, allowing her to speak for their kind. "We come seeking peaceful integration," Chen said, her voice steady. "Humanity has much to offer the galactic community." A sound like grinding metal emanated from Counselor Vorthak of the Krillian Empire, their equivalent of laughter. "Offer? You primitive apes have been spacefaring for barely 2 centuries. We have civilizations that predate your entire evolutionary history. Your technology is crude," added High Magistrate Quindal of the Ethereal Dominion, her translucent form shimmering with indignation. "Your ships leak radiation, your weapons are ballistic, and your computing systems are positively archaic." Zethkar raised one of his primary arms for silence. "The verdict of this council is unanimous. Humanity is too young, too violent, and too primitive to walk among the true children of the stars. Return to your little blue world and perhaps, in a few millennia, we might reconsider." Chen's jaw tightened, but she nodded curtly. "We understand your position, Council, but I want you to remember this day." She turned to leave, then paused. "Because one day you'll realize just how wrong you were about us." The Council dismissed her words as the posturing of a rejected primitive. That was 57 years ago. Admiral Marcus Reeve stood on the bridge of the UCS Indomitable, watching through the reinforced viewport as the combined fleet assembled around him. The sight still gave him pause. Not just human vessels, but ships from dozens of species, all bearing the blue and white insignia of the human Commonwealth. "Final count, Admiral," reported his Krillian tactical officer, his scales gleaming under the bridge lights. 14,000 ships from 43 species. The largest fleet in Unde galactic history. Reeve nodded, remembering the stories his grandmother had told him about Ambassador Chen's rejection at the Hegemony Council. How things had changed. Status on the Hegemony forces? Holding position around Zethkar Prime, his communications officer, a young ethereal named Lysandra, reported. "They're broadcasting surrender offers every few minutes now." The irony wasn't lost on him. The same species that had once called humans primitive now begged for mercy as their empire crumbled around them. It hadn't happened overnight. After their rejection, humanity had done what humans did best. They adapted, improved, and refused to give up. While the Hegemony Council rested on their ancient laurels, humans had pushed the boundaries of what was possible. First had come the technological leaps. Human ingenuity, unconstrained by traditions and accepted limitations, had revolutionized faster-than-light travel, developed quantum-entangled communications across galactic distances, and created fusion. Reactors so efficient they made hegemony power systems look like primitive combustion engines, but technology alone hadn't built this coalition. "Admiral," came a voice from behind him. Reeve turned to see General Thaxmore, a massive Altarian, whose loyalty had been earned through decades of friendship and mutual respect. "The Liberation Fleet reports successful contact with the underground resistance on Krillian 7. They're ready to coordinate the uprising." The real change had come when humanity started doing what the hegemony never had. They listened to the small voices. For every major species in the Hegemony Council, there were dozens of minor ones kept in servitude, their resources strip-mined, their cultures suppressed. The Council had maintained order through fear and technological superiority for millennia. Humans had offered something different: partnership. When the Vexani refugees had fled their dying world, the hegemony had turned them away. Humanity had given them new homes on colonial worlds, asked for nothing in return, and helped them rebuild their civilization. When the Silicon Collective had been labeled non-sentient by the Council, Human philosophers and scientists had fought for their recognition as a legitimate life form. One by one, species had begun to defect, not through conquest but through choice. "Sir," his human navigator called out, "we're receiving a priority transmission from Earth." President Martinez appeared on the main screen, her weathered face showing the strain of coordinating a galactic war. "Marcus, the Council has activated their planet killer. Intelligence suggests they're targeting the Vexani homeworld of New Haven." Reeves' hands clenched into fists. "Estimated arrival time?" 6 hours. Can you intercept?" "We'll make it in 4. He turned to his crew. "All ships, maximum burn. We have people to save." As the fleet surged forward, Reeve reflected on how they'd reached this point. The war hadn't started with human aggression. It had begun when the hegemony, seeing their authority challenged by humanity's growing influence, had launched a preemptive strike against Earth's colonies. They'd expected an easy victory against the primitive humans and their ragtag allies. Instead, they'd awakened something they didn't understand. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their tactics. It was their refusal to abandon those who had placed their trust in them. "Admiral, we're dropping out of hyperspace," the navigator announced. The hegemony planet killer hung in space like a mechanical moon, its massive energy cannon already charging. But between it and New Haven's populated orbital stations stood the Commonwealth fleet. "All ships," Reeve broadcast, "protect the innocent. Show them what we stand for." The battle was fierce but brief. Hegemony technology might have been more refined, but human determination and the desperate courage of 43 species fighting for their freedom proved unstoppable. As the planet killer's wreckage drifted in space, Reeve received another transmission. This time it was Zethkar himself, the same Altarian who had dismissed humanity decades ago. "Admiral Reeve," the former council leader's voice was hollow, with defeat. We surrender. Unconditionally." "Acknowledged, Counselor," Reeve replied. "Prepare for humanitarian aid teams. Your people will be treated with dignity, something you never understood." In the aftermath, as liberation fleets spread across former hegemony space, freeing enslaved species and dismantling oppressive governments, the galaxy began to reshape itself. Not under human dominion, but under human values: cooperation over conquest, freedom over control, hope over fear. The Commonwealth flag now flew over 1,000 worlds, not as a symbol of occupation but as a promise that every sentient being had a right to chart their own destiny among the stars. Ambassador Chen had been right. They had remembered that day, but not as the Hegemony Council had expected. They remembered it as the day they underestimated the most dangerous thing in the universe, a species that refuses to be told what it cannot become.